Hello, TandLers. Grab your coffee, your clipboard, and maybe just a little sass because this Encore episode is serving field trip fabulousness with a side of science realness. I'm your host, Nancy, and this is TandL Talks, the podcast for, about, and featuring fabulous educators. Today, we're stepping into the scene with a powerhouse trio of fourth grade teachers from Sunrise Elementary who don't just teach the life cycle, they live it. They love it, and they bring their students along for the ride. From classroom charts to salmon runs, this crew is turning learning into an experience. And trust me, the energy, it's amazing. So buckle up because we're diving into the hatchery, the hype, and the moments that had kids and teachers hooked. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to TandL Talks. We are here today talking with some fabulous teachers about our fourth grade hatchery field trip. And let's start out with introductions. Tell us who you are. We'll start with my co-host.
Hi, I'm Ann Schumacher, elementary instructional coach for science.
I'm Jenna Kinney. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Sunrise Elementary.
I'm Abby Say, and also a fourth grade teacher at Sunrise Elementary.
And I'm Chelsea Wilkinson-Walker, also a fourth grade teacher at Sunrise Elementary.
We're glad you're here today. Before we start with the official interview, I want you to think about, is there a teacher that you can think of in your past that had a big influence on you? Anybody can go first if you have somebody in mind.
I have my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade middle school teacher. She taught history and social studies, Mrs. LeConte, and she had a way of really bringing their curriculum to life and making class really fun. So when you said that, that was the first person that popped into my mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World, but otherwise a real teacher. It would be Ellen Newman. She was my junior English teacher who just really gave leadership positions and recognized students within her classroom.
Thank you.
I'll bounce off of Chelsea. My leadership teacher at Callis Junior High, Tim Templin, he was just a super inspirational person to me. He helped me and pushed me to be a better leader and obviously also taught social studies, but definitely the leadership part really stuck with me.
Ann, do you have somebody you'd like to talk about? I think I asked you this question on a different podcast.
I'll switch my answer up, though. How's that? I had really wonderful music and band teachers in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska, and how they got there and energized that small high school was really phenomenal. And also, I think they let us see who they were as people and living a life of service and community-based. They just did some really great things to let us know that they cared, and it was really cool.
Thank you. We all have those teachers who impacted us, and you forget that when you're in the day-to-day grind of teaching, but what you do really makes a difference forever and ever. And that is just pretty powerful. So thank you for sharing. Shout outs to our former teachers.
Of course.
So today we're talking about the fourth grade field trip, and what can you tell us about it? You have led this work since the very beginning. What can you tell us about it?
Well, the hatchery itself is a real jewel within the Puyallup community that I don't think a lot of people are familiar with. It's just off of 14th Street and right downtown. And that particular property was owned by Fish and Wildlife and run by Fish and Wildlife for about over 50, 60 years as a hatchery. But then in the early 2010s, it became kind of a financial burden. And the state quietly decided they were going to try to lease it out to CPAC Foods. But the community around the hatchery found out about this, and they really galvanized a group of volunteers within a time of about 6 weeks. They were able to advertise this or put it out on Facebook and get people For sure, they got the information out that this was happening. Without the community support, though, they couldn't have gotten as far as they did. And so now the hatchery is still run by Fish and Wildlife, but we have a whole foundation that runs the education piece, which is what has in turn made it possible for all of the fourth grade students in the Puyallup School District, over 2,100 kids, to come to that field trip at that hatchery each year. So the hatchery releases well over 1 million fish a year. It has a really powerful impact environmentally, but also educationally. And the kids are just excited to go and learn about this really cool piece of science and culture in our community.
Thank you. So, our Sunrise team, what did you think about when you first heard that you were going to be taking kids on this field trip? What ideas did you have or thoughts?
So in my classroom, I have a calendar, and one of the little stickers is field trip. And so when it got put on the calendar, my fourth graders were like, what? We're going on a field trip? Like, that's so exciting. And especially to find out where it was. A lot have gone outside of school even. So they were really looking forward to it.
Yeah, similar experience. I'm not from this area. I'm from the Midwest, so we don't have salmon just around. So I was excited about it. Last year was my first opportunity to explore the curriculum and go on the field trip. And I think I was excited as my students were, and they look forward to it. It's a well-known thing that in fourth grade, this is where you go. And so I had a lot of students coming in and actually asking, when are we going to the hatchery? So that was kind of neat to see it passed down from the older classes too.
I was really excited because I grew up on the Puyallup River. So I grew up going out in my backyard, going fishing. So just being able to go to the hatchery and see and have another different view on how the salmon actually physically come down and into the river is something that was really cool. And I actually learned a lot too with the kids, but they were so excited to go. And so I was able to connect like, oh, I grew up fishing on the Puyallup River, and so let's connect some different pieces together. So I think that was a really fun experience for me and the kids as well.
Now, you've gone 3 years or 2 years?
This was my first year at the fish
Oh,
hatchery.
it was. Okay. This is your second year?
So it's my second year teaching the curriculum, but my youngest actually got sick the day of our field trip last year. And so I had to, stay home and missed out. So this was my first year to actually go on the field trip. So I was very excited.
Yeah. And you're new to the district,
And I'm new to the district, yeah. So this was my first year, and just to see how much of the salmon comes from the PNW area is amazing. Coming from like the south, where that's unheard of. So it was awesome.
So how did you prepare your students before you went on the field trip so that they could get the most out of it?
So I think it's really well laid out in the lesson plans where the expectation or the hope is that you get through lessons 1 through 5. And so at first you're like, oh, because it's halfway, and then we go. But there really is a lot of foundational content in those first 5 lessons. So they show up and they can actually engage with what they're seeing. They don't show up wondering, well, what is that? And they were really able to connect with that. I know there were obviously a number of different stations, and each part of lessons 1 through 5, they all somehow touch on one of those stations. So they were truly knowledgeable at every point throughout the field trip. So I think that was hugely beneficial.
We talked about the life cycle. That's one of the first lessons that you go over with the kids. When we were at the fish hatchery, we saw the Alevin, and they were like, whoa, I thought the Alevin were a lot bigger, because that's what the picture that we put on our chart, like they were way bigger. And so connecting the dots just really helped from the lesson to actually going to the fish hatchery and seeing these things in real life really was amazing. But again, the lessons really prepared the kids because they knew what they were talking about going into the fish hatchery.
I think it made it more impactful too because they could actually see it in real life. It wasn't just up on the board or on our chart that we made together. It was in person. And so I think they were much more bought in from the moment we stepped off the bus because they were seeing it in real life.
Were there any students that surprised you?
Yes. I had a student in particular in class who was just kind of, nonchalant about it. And then as soon as it was in person, she had her hand up for everything and she knew all the answers. And I'm like, whoa, who is this kid? And she whispers to me and she goes, I really like this unit. Aww. And so I was like, okay, well, there it is. I'm glad there was something that pulled you in. But like you were saying, both of you, in person, really, not just out of a book.
And I had a student who loves to go fishing. He's normally very quiet and reserved in class. And the moment we mentioned salmon, he was invested. Had mom send me pictures. We were able to give him a spotlight in class to explain how salmon are a part of his life and a part of his family's experience. And so surprising that he was so vocal. And so it was, I don't know, fun to see him make that connection to his personal life.
So is there a moment from the field trip that stands out to you? One that really just captured kids' excitement?
I would love to share the feeding the fish. That was like the highlight, even for me, like being able to take a cup of food and feed the fish and see how they react and respond. The kids were like, "Whoa, this is so cool." And they were all like yelling and screaming because the fish would flap and get them wet. And so it was just really cool to see their excitement take off in that area because it's something fun. You physically get to feed the fish. You get to throw food in the tank and see how they respond and how they eat the food. So that was really exciting for me and the kids as well, I think.
That was a good answer. I also, the Alevin or Alvin, they both were kind of pronouncing it two different ways. So, Anne, feel free to chime in if I'm mispronouncing that.
Either one is okay.
Okay, perfect. So I'll say Alevin. That's what we've been calling it in class. But I had a basket of eggs that had hatched the night prior. And so my class was really excited to see them in real life. And like you said earlier on the chart, it almost looks like a tadpole size. Right. But in reality, the morning after they hatched, they were smaller than like your pinky nail. And so I think that really hit home with a lot of them to see the size difference. And so that was a very popular station for our field trip just because it was so new to see them in real life with the yolk sac and the ginormous eyes on this teeny tiny little Alevin.
The little baby fish.
They were real cute.
Yes.
I agree.
You both took both.
Other than going on the bridge and getting to see them in the creek as well. And so just, again, making those connections was great.
How did the hatchery experience help your students understand animal adaptations and habitats in a deeper way?
Back to what we said earlier, just seeing it in real life. I think being able to walk around and go to the bridge and see them in the creek, not just in a tank, or to see the different stages and the different markings that they adapt as they go through their life cycle, I think was impactful. Even the dead fish, where they had to go through and count the live versus the dead. I mean, they understand the significance that the salmon that die also have on the environment and on the life cycle. So I think I really liked the interactive journal that kind of kept them accountable to make those connections. And so I found that to be impactful, where they could take notes and have a visual at the end of it with what they saw and how it relates.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And have there been any changes either in learning or participation that you've noticed in your students since the field trip?
They keep asking, when can we go on another field trip? Yeah. I mean, that's really the biggest question I get every day. But we do a lot of connection back to the salmon and the field trip in general. I think that's just like, oh, remember how we saw the salmon swimming up the stream and they were being courageous and they were trying their hardest. You can do that as well. And just connecting in a different, deeper way.
Yeah, and there's, of course, 5 lessons after the field trip, so they continue to make those connections, and I think they're more invested now that they truly understand the process and what we saw. And then also, too, with our future social studies lessons, I'll be curious to see how it ties back, but salmon are such a huge part of the Puyallup tribe, and it comes up in treaties and all the things, and so I'm excited. At least last year I saw them make those connections, and the treaties became much more meaningful to them because they recognize the significance of salmon in the Puyallup tribe. So I didn't see the connections necessarily right away in other content areas, but once we get into social studies lessons as well, it was easier for them to make that connection.
And Anne, you've done a lot of work with Crystal Widman, our social studies instructional coach. Anything you want to share with the TandLers out there?
It's wonderful to hear that kids are making those connections and seeing the ways in which the tribe, because there was quite a partnership also with the tribal hatchery and the Puyallup hatchery. And so I just love the ideas of continued partnership and understanding and focus on the environment, and kids are picking up on that. We received a grant, and so we're actually we're creating signs that tell the native plant names in Puyallup language, in toolshoot seed, and in English, and a little bit about their Latin origin, and those will go on the hatchery pathway down by the river and the bridge as well. So just continuing to build those connections. But it's wonderful to hear that the kids are seeing that already.
How did themes like equity and STEM careers, how has any of that come out in what you saw in your field trip?
It's an interesting question. I don't think we directly said, this is an amazing STEM career to go into, but I also feel like in fourth grade, you don't want to be too obvious because what adults do aren't necessarily cool. So I feel like it was a great way for them to see it in person, and they got to interact with all of the different volunteers that were there and really hear about why they were passionate about it. And so I think in some way many of them connected to those career paths without even realizing it because they were interested in what they were doing. So I was not explicit in this would be a great career for you to have, but I think naturally just the excitement around what they get to do every day as their job was appealing to some people.
And I know one of the leaders there had mentioned like, oh, we have a lot of teachers who kind of like retire after this and come and teach here. So if any of you are wanting to be teachers or someday want to be here, and a lot of them were like, oh, I'd never even thought of that as an option. So we're really excited to just kind of have that new opportunity.
I know one of our former teachers who just retired last year, Karen Gonderman, is a volunteer out there.
Yes.
Very cool.
So shout out to Karen. What impact did this unit have on your kids' engagement or their connection to their community?
I feel like it ties back to what Abby was saying. The Puyallup tribe obviously has a lot of impact for our community. And so for them to make that connection, and then as we are going into our next units of social studies, like I think it'll only grow deeper.
And as far as engagement goes, I really like the lessons, especially the 5 leading up to the field trip. I feel like it's exciting, it's engaging, it's relevant. We're there making the charts together. We're talking about the different steps of it. We're coming up with our CCD chart and circling back to all the definitions so that they feel prepared. And because there's excitement around the field trip and we explain this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it, I think they were automatically more bought in because they realized that they were going to see it in person. And just like most things in school, if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss something. And I don't think anybody wanted to miss what was happening on the field trip. So thankfully engagement, from my experience in these particular lessons, are just easier to come by. I think it's easier to get them engaged.
I also had a lot of parent engagement.
Oh, nice.
I was asking for volunteers to come on the field trip. These kids have never been on a field trip before because of COVID. And so this was a lot of those kids' first field trip, and a lot of parents saying, oh yeah, I would love to chaperone on the field trip. I got 100% of permission slips back within a week. Kids were going home and asking their families, can I go on the field trip? Can you fill out my permission slip form? So I think parent involvement and engagement was also a big factor in the lead up to the field trip.
And to add on to what Jenna is saying, I agree. We had the same kind of outcome, and like all of our kids had chaperones, like 2 to each group, which was awesome because they got to learn as well and just wanting to be involved. So it was nice for us teachers because then we really got to walk around and see all of our groups instead of just being with one sole group and just see all the light and engagement on their faces. So it was awesome.
I love that piece about educating our families too, right? If your parents didn't have an opportunity like this when they were kids, it was probably all new learning for them.
The amount of parents that were like, I didn't even know this was over here, or I've never been here before and I've lived here all my life. I was like, well, me neither, but I'm not from here. So they were excited, and some of them have younger siblings and they're like, I can't wait to come back next year with them. So,
and somebody said that kids are reporting that they've gone back with their families.
I also think it's a really cool legacy just for the hatchery itself and for our community, in that the more fourth graders that go, it becomes this thing that's known, but also then more and more families know the hatchery is there, because really we have to continue the legacy. All the volunteers who started this historical foundation, some of them are retired and aging out of their ability to volunteer and be really involved. We need to have people who will step in and continue educating our community about this resource. Those runs at the hatchery are all filled with artesian spring water. There are natural resources there. We cannot underestimate how unusual and unique And blessed we are as a community to have that partnership and that just at our fingertips. It's just such a cool thing.
And what's next for the hatchery field trip? You talked about the native language signs going up. What else are you thinking?
Some of those post field trip lessons, we're going to just continue to build the connections with our native liaison and social studies connections. Third grade has a pretty good salmon unit, more based on, again, on the social studies side of things, but making sure that that really builds cleanly and continues to add the rigor. We added the microorganisms. That's not really about the hatchery, but that was a fun thing that really helps build for fifth grade. So as far as more native connections, I think also the continued partnership with the tribe. Every year it just gets a little bit more clear, obvious to everyone. This is how these partnerships work. And so it's just a natural order of things, just continues to evolve because we all appreciate the lands that we have here and the stewardship that the Puyallup tribe has given since time immemorial.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. So if there's a teacher out there who hasn't gone on their fourth grade hatchery field trip yet, what would you tell them? What advice would you give a teacher who hasn't gone yet or maybe wants to teach fourth grade next year?
Talking logistics or
Yeah.
just like, what do we mean here?
Well, they went on the day before I got to go. We had to split separately. So for logistics, prepare, dress warm. However, we got the beautiful day. It was
Yes, we
perfect
did.
outside.
No, I was going to say, logistically speaking, teach the 5 lessons. It may seem like, oh, I'll get to it later, but in reality, you'll just see them light up when they can actually connect it to something that they've already been exposed to. So teach the 5 lessons, even if you don't think you want to, you should. And then when you're loading the buses, one thing that worked really well for us is we loaded them up based on the groups that they were in. Seems like something small, but we were able to walk right off the bus and get started in the different stations. And so I felt like that was a big win for us, just because we didn't waste a moment of time. So they got to start right away.
I think as a teacher standpoint, just immerse yourself, walk through all the groups, sit in on different groups, listening to the volunteers. I learned a lot going to the field trip because I was just kind of walking around. I didn't assign myself to a group like Anne was talking about in the fish hatchery training. She's like, make sure you're available to go wherever is needed. My kids didn't need me, so I was able to walk around and go listen to the different volunteers. And I think that was really a cool thing because I learned a lot as well.
And then I also think it helps set us up for next year. Because again, I missed my first opportunity to go. So this was my first experience too. And there were certain things on the field trip that I thought, oh gosh, I didn't realize that. And so just knowing what we can also add in for context then next year will be helpful too, since we were able to see everything.
Anything else you need us to know or you need the TandLers out there to know about?
Go to the fish hatchery.
Yes. Check it out.
And see the painting that they have now that's up on the wall.
It's beautiful.
It's so beautiful, the mural. Yes, we got to take a photo in front of it and sent it to them and sign the book.
Yes.
So that you're a guest and you're part of the tradition.
I love it. Well, thank you for being here. Before we end, I also want to do a little shout out to Tina Van Blaricom, who works tirelessly to make all of this happen. So
Yes.
we absolutely appreciate Tina's work out there. Anything else, Anne?
I'd add the Patty and Richard at the
Yes.
hatchery are just stalwart in their support, and we've been able to partner with them for a long time. Richard's always making sure that my illustrations are exactly right and my pronunciation and everything. Kids appreciate, but they benefit from that, but they also just appreciate he and Patty for their work and their presence. They're just big personalities when you come off that bus.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time, and I loved hearing about your experiences.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And just like that, TandLers, we've reached the end of another iconic episode. But let's be honest, the impact, that's here to stay. From tiny Alevin to big aha moments, today reminded us that when learning gets real, engagement follows. And when teachers bring the passion, students rise every single time. So whether you're planning your next field trip or just trying to spark that magic in your classroom, remember, the connection, the community, and the courage, it all matters. And yes, you are that teacher making a difference. Until next time, keep it bold, keep it joyful, and keep those students swimming upstream towards success.